Leroy, if you want to say anything. Otherwise, we can open it up to questions.
See? Oh, there we go. Just a little clarification that the congregation meets as members of the church currently and also as members of the society. So previously, when the congregation would vote for elders, they would vote, and then they would meet as the society or the corporation and vote for the trustees. Well, that will not change under the new regime because the congregation, all of the members, will vote first for the elders, and then they will meet as the society and vote for the elders who will now become, in effect, trustees of the church, the board of the church, if you will. And John mentioned the 4 officers of the board will be similar to the prior officers of the board of trustees. There will be a president, 1 or more vice presidents, a treasurer, and a secretary. So really, the format is not changing that dramatically. The main focus is to improve communication among the people that are going to make the decisions. And there have been questions in the past, well, there's different kinds of skills that are required. Well, I think it's more effective when we have people that are more spiritually oriented and those who have experience in the corporate world to work together, to communicate in one meeting at the time the decisions are being made, as opposed to, well, you're going to meet over there and we're going to meet over here and then we're going to have to come together. Because we have some big issues we're going to have to deal with in the near future. Our church is changing. And if you've been listening to the sermons the last 3 weeks, we have to figure out how we can reach out not only to the community, but how we can sustain our own membership, have a vital membership, have a well-functioning financial system to take care of our building. So that's really the reason for embarking on this. So.
Okay, so.
We need the microphone for the recording, please.
Make sure you hold it to your mouth.
Thank you. My name is Peg Forbes. I've been a member here for a long time. I did serve on session as an elder several years ago, and I know that we all had different, we could sign up for budget committees or, to be part of different groups. Will there be enough elders, 18 altogether? Will we have additional, meetings, in other words, is what I'm saying, to make a smaller group in the session now? I'm just wondering how that's going to work, because we haven't given up on any of the other, committees and stuff, and all session members have to be parts of different committees. So that's my main question.
Yeah, and I think the answer to your question is yes. If we have 15 or 18 elders, that should be enough to put at least 2 on every council. And then, right now, the way the councils are structured, you have a trustee representative and you have an elder representative on each council. So from that standpoint, things really aren't changing. But the key then, as I said earlier, is we need to get volunteers from the congregation to staff the committees, like we do now. I mean, the budget committee has an elder and a trustee on it, as well as members at large. The building committee has an elder and a trustee and members at large. The finance and endowment committee, same way. So on the one hand, I would answer your question, yes, I think we do, but the challenge then still becomes we need to get members of the congregation at large to be on these councils and committees.
The way, just to fill in a little bit more, the way the current session operates, we have the councils, worship council, mission council, our children, our families. And that's actually where the budgeting process starts as well. That's where the budget is. So again, as John mentioned, there will be representatives that Pastor Ray will suggest, or in the past I've kind of helped him in that regard, to place people on various councils according to their gifts and interests. So hopefully with 15, I think we'll be able to cover the councils. Also, presently at session meetings, there's a format called the dashboard. And every council kind of brings the rest of the elders up to speed on what their goals and objectives are. So there's a structure in place right now to operate more efficiently. So I think it'll make the transition really pretty easy, just reducing we're actually increasing the number of elders to 15. But I think that will be enough to fully staff the various councils, which is where the real work gets done through the committees to the councils.
I guess I'm not clear on something. The resource management group, is that going to be totally separate from session, or will some of their members actually members of session as well?
No, the Resource Management Council will be a council as under the session, just like you have the Worship Council and the Pastoral Care Council and so on and so forth. So you're what we're doing is creating a new council that effectively would have under it the three committees that are currently under the auspices of session. I think somebody made a suggestion. I wasn't here Wednesday night, but somebody made a suggestion that why don't you call the Research Management Council the Trustee Council? I mean, in essence, that's what's happening.
Yeah, and currently on that dashboard that I was referencing, there is a line item for the Board of Trustees. So if we use the nomenclature in the changed bylaws, it'll just be the Research Management Council, and they'll make reports and present their minutes to all of the other elders, again, to improve communication. Because we found in the past that to get things done sometimes is difficult. And the communication problem has existed at this church for quite a few years, and we're trying to solve that. And to engender a situation where people can get things done and feel good about their service and build the church and build God's kingdom.
Just to clarify in the answer to that previous question, though, it's my understanding the 4 officers, the president, the vice president, the treasurer, and the secretary will be on that resource management council, and they all will be elders, right? So at least 4 members of the resource management council will be elders, and then there may be at-large members also.
Yeah, and I think one quick point of clarification, it's the way the bylaws read, it would be the 4 officers would be the president, 1 or more vice presidents, and a secretary. We're leaving open the possibility that the treasurer of the church would not be, we're not saying that the treasurer of the church has to be on session. Clark Robinson, I think, as all of you know, is currently the treasurer, and he's not either a trustee or a session member. So the treasurer could be a member, but doesn't have to be. The question is, how many councils are there?
All right, now you're really, all right.
This is a test.
Worship, mission, our children, our families, pastoral care and community outreach, personnel, discipleship, thank you, leadership. Yeah.
Finance and endowment would be
Help me
under
out here,
resource management.
Lori. 6, did I get it? Okay. Yeah, and that's not going to change.
One of the questions that came to me, by the way, I'm Con Savoy, I currently serve on session. So I'm here more to get information and listen. But one of the questions that came to me earlier, a longtime member who's, I think, maybe served on trustees in the past, but had expressed to me a concern. I believe we addressed this in our last session meeting with trustees over the status, the use of, the security of, whatever, of the endowments, and the concern that with going to this structure, there was, we have the two separate, she called this kind of the checks and balances, even though it technically isn't that, because session can always override trustee recommendations anyway, but reality is it was, certainly perceived that way. So there's this fear, I guess, underlying. And I believe, Leroy, you had expressed to us in session, maybe that's why I'm bringing this up again, to share what happens within session when a vote comes up or an issue comes up that affects endowments, and what's the reality behind that?
If your question is, will there be any change in how the endowment documents are functioning?
Functioning, and then the vote, how they're affected, the voting, and how all that's worked.
So currently, to change the endowments document requires two separate votes. And to change them requires a 75% vote, both by the Board of Trustees as the endowment documents provide, and the session. So there would still, and the new bylaws establish, thanks to Mike Campbell, that if there is ever a situation where the term Board of Trustees has to act, and that would be in the case of the endowments and also with our pension plan, the session would have that power in our bylaws. But you still are going to have two votes, 75%, one year and then the next year. That's a very high mark to hit to change something. I mean, we only require 2/3 to change our endowment, our bylaws, 75% to change the endowment documents. So currently we get a trailing 4.5% distribution from the endowments to fund the operating budget and also the building. So from my standpoint, I think it's still very, very secure.
Well, and then just as
Yeah.
a follow-up on that, since we're looking at 15 elders, 4 of whom would be the board of the society effectively to the trustees, since you need a 75% vote, those 4 officers could band together, if you will, as trustees and effectively block any change to the endowment document. So there was method to the madness behind the math of 4 and 15.
Yeah. Just to clarify, though, the 4 officers are the officers of the board of the society. All of the elders are the board of the society. So any 4 actually from the session could say, no, that's a bad idea.
So as a person who served on session multiple times and now a trustee, I'm looking at this trying to figure out how does this work in terms of manpower, and I'm seeing 4 people who are going to be session members and have to be attending every session meeting, and they're also going to have to attend every resource management council meeting. So it kind of reflects on Peg's question of, will there be more meetings? For those 4 people, we're talking about a huge commitment compared to what being a session member or a trustee was and under a bicameral. So I'm wondering how much the group that's suggesting this has thought about that, because as your membership dwindles, you're asking fewer people to do bigger jobs, longer commitments, harder commitments, and that to me may not be any different than if we had the bicameral, but because some people as we stand now, are doing a yeoman's task, the two men standing in front of us included, and I'm just concerned about how much that's been discussed.
Yeah.
Well, if I could answer this, let's take finance and endowment, for example. You're on that committee, as is Rick and I. That meets 4 times a year. The Resource Management Council, I am anticipating it'll probably meet quarterly, and so that won't be a monthly meeting. Personnel, yes, personnel meets monthly. You have committees that are going to meet monthly, building committee. Budget committee, by the way, really works for 3 or 4 months. Yeah, okay, 5%. And and I don't want to minimize, yes, we're going to have 15 elders, but I think if the system works more efficiently, the burdensome time issue can be dealt with. I think also the fact that for most of the councils and the session meetings, they're going to be on Zoom. They're going to be hybrid. So I think that will ease the time factor. The heavy lifting always has to be done. You're absolutely right. The building committee, the finance and endowment committee, personnel council, the budget committee, the stewardship committee, yeah, we're going to have good people that volunteer who are not elders. And hopefully that's Pastor Ray's message. Find out what your gifts are and let's get you involved.
Was there a question from online? Oh. Oh, okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, it hasn't come up in this particular meeting, but I've talked with people and have been talking with people ever since the idea of unicameral came up. And I think that there are 2 misconceptions. And I think John Powell spoke to the first misconception, that being the fact that many of our members don't understand the bulk of the work that's done in committees. That's one misconception. But I think the other misconception among some of the members is that you have this group of people with the title of trustees who are business and whatever, and you have other people who are elders who are spiritual. When in fact, I've been a trustee, been a chairman of the trustees, and now I'm on session. What you actually have is men and women on both groups who have skills in the legal profession, skills as business owners, skills as corporate executives, and so forth. So you don't lose anything when you move from trustees to resource management, because you're working with the same group of people with many of the same skills. Even if you don't have corporate skills, let's just take investing. I suspect that many of you have some part in managing your own investment portfolio, which requires you to study the market and be aware of the market and so forth. So all I'm really saying is that whether we call them trustees, resource management council, elders, you still have to have people who have the ability to dissect problems and analyze them and come to good solutions. And you'll find that among elders as well as trustees.
Yeah, I think just to piggyback on that, Rick, it's a good point. If you look at the makeup of the trustees in the session over the last 10 years, the crossover in terms of people that have served on both is rather significant. And I think that just goes to the point that you just made. The one thing I will say in response to Jim's question about workload, and Leroy and I have talked about this, is that I think the meeting structure is going to have to change, because when you think of session meeting once a month and you guys are 2.5, whatever it is, hours, and trustees meeting and it could go an hour and a half, 2 hours, I don't think anybody's going to want to sit through a 5-hour meeting. At least I wouldn't. So I think what we're going to have to do, assuming we head this way, we're going to have to sit down and think through the meeting structure and to be more efficient from a meeting standpoint. So that's one area where I would definitely agree with it from a workload standpoint.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You know, and even now, we have what is called the first read and the second read. Mission could come with an idea and then present it, and there would be a discussion, and perhaps it's a great idea, and the vote is called. If it needs further investigation and discussion, it's postponed. I think that will continue, and I would assume that will continue with the Resource Management Council as well. The big issues that we faced in the past where we brought everybody together, obviously, changing the bylaws or spending $1 million or more on our HVAC, yeah, that needs some deliberation. That has tremendous significance for the future of the church. And those decisions do need to be fully vetted and fully discussed. And I anticipate that's going to continue.
I'm okay? Okay. Just out of curiosity, this resource group, who will appoint or accept the at-large members of that group? How does that happen?
That will be a process of recruitment. I suspect as committees are formed, at least that's my experience in the past, as chairs of particular committees or councils, we open them up, and it's approved by this session, but obviously that's one of the jobs of all of us, to find good people to serve on various councils and committees. And the more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned, to spread the workload.
I think your question might have been, how would the 4 officers be determined?
No.
Oh, okay.
I understand the 4 officers. It's the at-large people that would be a part of that group that you're looking for, probably certain skills and backgrounds and things like that. I was just curious who would decide who those people would be.
Well,
because they're in essence the new trustees.
When I was asked to chair building many years ago, they just asked me, and I don't know what process was. But I know when I was chair of that committee, I sought other people that impressed me and said, hey, would you like to serve on the committee? But obviously, too, the nominating committee really functions in that capacity. Personnel, budget in the bylaws stipulate that certain members have to come from session, and there has to be certain members at large from the congregation. Those are the only 2 that actually establish that. Finance and endowment is a makeup of trustees, so obviously to carry that theme over, we would try to have people that have the financial background. But that's a job of knowing our membership and including as many people as we can.
Anything else? Are there any questions online? Do we know? Okay.
It's 11:36. I don't know how many of you have.
We do have one question from the online. You referenced Zoom meetings. How will the agenda of the meeting be set if we go to hybrid meetings?
Well, currently, the agenda of the session is established by Pastor Ray with some minor input from me. Yeah, we establish a time limit for the various items that we're going to deal with. And if we're able to get the work done in the allotted time and take a vote, then we take a vote. If we don't, we'll table it until the next meeting. So, yeah, the agenda will have to be tightened sufficiently to work efficiently. At the prior meeting, I went through the bylaws. I don't know whether that's necessary at this point. I'd be happy to do it just to highlight some where the various issues are dealt with. But if you have any questions specifically about the bylaws, I think my email is available to everyone and contact me. We've done I think a thorough job, but not perfect. And there was a comment made at the Wednesday meeting about limiting people's ability to be both on the nominating committee and to serve, and we may take a look at that issue. Also whether the chairs of these various committees has to be the elder. We'll take a look at that as well. Because sometimes another active member who's been on the committee for a long period would be a better chair. So we're going to take a look at that as well in the final iteration. So we have another meeting next Sunday, which will be in the choir room. So,
and this meeting has been recorded, so to the extent that you want to go back and listen, the recording will be available at some point. And then you have the handouts, and to the extent after reading them you have any questions, happy to get on the phone or respond to email at your convenience.
Yeah, and I believe they're online as well.
And there is a link online where you can see these. Yep.
So thank you very much, all of you. Appreciate the questions. Because, as was mentioned, the last time this was presented, it could have been presented better. More information could have gone out in advance. My opinion, this is a better product too. So maybe I'm hoping that the Holy Spirit has kind of worked here for the last couple of years and presenting something that's more pleasing to the Lord. So if you have anything else?
I just wanted to say thanks for your time and your willingness to but welcome questions and all the work you put into this and your heart that you put into this and the bylaws being amended. I mean, I can only imagine how much work this was, so thank you.
Thank you.
We're having trouble recruiting session and trustees now. Why do we believe it will be easier when the jobs are combined?
Well, that's part of the job of the nominating committee and other members and the pastor to get people to give of their time and talents, not just their money. And I would hope that for the people that love this church as I do and John does and all of you, that you'd be willing to step up and serve on a committee or a council or do something. And that's where the real joy comes anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we're still going to have to go out and recruit, but by combining the two bodies into one, you're reducing the total number of people that need to be served by
half.
About half.
Yeah.
So
30 to 15.
We still need to recruit fewer people, but was it the Marines that say a few good men or a few good women, something like that? So anyhow.
We're looking for quality, not quantity. Thank you. Really appreciate it.